When the crowd saw that two cultivators resonated with the stars in the sky, they all closed their eyes and attempted to do the same. When the crowd saw that two cultivators resonated with the stars in the sky, they all closed their eyes and attempted to do the same. It was as though the two cultivators who had succeeded cleared up a path for the rest of them. The crowd could see hope now. Down below, the other cultivators in the starry sky also raised their heads and looked over in this direction. They saw the divine halos of the great path shining down from the stars in the heavens. Their hearts immediately trembled. Their figures also rose into the sky. It seemed that the teachings of great Emperor Ziwei were contained in the various stars in the sky. Very quickly, the various cultivators arrived here. Their gazes were fixed on the two figures. Intense emotions welled up inside all of them. "Is this a divine relic?" someone mumbled. A divine relic left behind by great Emperor Ziwei was finally found? Did that mean that they would also have a chance of finding another? Right then, Futian also looked at the two figures. Bathed in divine light, the two figures seemed to be inheriting some form of power. It was power coming from the stars in the sky above them. The power contained within the divine halos of the great path should be compatible with the two cultivators. Not just anyone could sense the star containing divine power and inherit the power within it. At the very least, it was definitely not as simple as the crowd imagined it to be. The top prominent figures of various realms had gathered here, yet, up until now, only two people had managed to do so. Hence, it would most likely be a dream for others to want to attempt to do so. Futian predicted that only a handful of people would succeed. Would finding a compatible star and resonating with it be that easy? Futian thought to himself. Then, his figure floated in the sky, and he emptied his thoughts. His consciousness once again wandering in the endless starry sky. In an instant, the light of endless stars appeared in his view. It was as though all of them had appeared before him. His consciousness rose high in the starry sky and came before the gigantic face of great Emperor Ziwei. The starry sky seemed to fall silent. It was as though only the sky full of stars existed. Each star shone with brilliant starlight. They seemed ethereal and unreachable. This time, he did not head over towards one star. He had already tried to do so once before this. There was nothing on the star that he had gone to. It was an endless wasteland. It might be because of the star, or it might be his own lack of compatibility. If he tried to visit each star one at a time, how long would he need to try out each star in this vast sky? A few decades? Centuries? He couldn't sense each star in the sky above. Then, how had the two people before this managed to do so? Was it a coincidence, or was it inevitable? Futian did not head over towards the stars. He instead wandered the starry sky, aimlessly floating about. He did so purely to see whether or not he could sense anything. After all, it was impossible that he would discover the mysteries of the stars after having just arrived. The two who succeeded had been here for several days before managing to communicate with the stars in the sky and drawing the divine light into them. It was naturally impossible for him to immediately do so upon arrival. Although he did not know who those two cultivators were, they were certainly the most outstanding figures among those present. In the starry sky, Futian's illusory figure floated about aimlessly. He walked around in space, occasionally stopping to observe the various stars, comprehending the vast, mysterious place. Gradually, his consciousness completely entered into a Zen state. He forgot about everything in the outside world, and even forgot about his own being. There was no noise, no stray thoughts. It was as though his own being had followed his consciousness here. After floating around in the sky for a very long time, Futian still did not manage to grasp any pattern. His consciousness continued to wander around the starry sky. He came beneath a star. The star radiated frightening starlight, and it was shining brightly. It was the star that had resonated with the cultivator from the divine prefecture below. What was different with this star? The illusory figure of Futian, formed from his consciousness, stood there, observing quietly. However, he still could not make out anything unique about this star. He then floated towards another star. Although the next star radiated dark divine light, it appeared to be a star hidden within the dark world. It was actually difficult to sense its presence. This caught Yi Futian by surprise. What was off about it? He began to observe the area of the segment around this star. Suddenly, he sensed an extremely powerful divine might of the Great Path. It came pressing down on his consciousness. His expression changed slightly. Gradually, he found it difficult for his consciousness to withstand this pressure. His consciousness dissipated and disappeared without a trace. Huff! Yi Futian exhaled deeply. His eyes revealed a sharp divine light. In the instant that his consciousness dissipated, he seemed to have discovered something. As he looked up in the direction of the star, Yi Futian's figure dashed up into the sky and shot straight towards the high heavens. Many cultivators around Yi Futian stared at his figure and could not help but reveal strange expressions. What was he doing? Could it be that he actually wanted to search the various stars? Yi Futian came to a region higher in the sky. There were no signs of humans here, and the other cultivators were also not here. Divine light shone from his body as he sat down cross-legged. The divine halo of the ancient trees circled his figure. A silhouette immediately flew out from within his body. Yi Futian's spiritual soul had actually separated from his flesh and floated high into the sky. His spiritual soul was bathed in divine halos, seemingly containing the will of the great emperor. His physical body sat cross-legged underneath the starry sky motionlessly. Blind Tai and Fangai also came here, protecting his physical body. Fangai raised his head and peered at Yi Futian's spiritual soul that had left his body high in the sky. He revealed a strange look. What was Yi Futian doing? Blind Tai's expression also twitched as he raised his eyebrows slightly. He similarly did not understand what Yi Futian was doing. However, knowing Yi Futian, he must have a reason for doing so. Yi Futian might be onto something. In the sky above, Yi Futian's spiritual soul replaced his previous consciousness. He once again came to the place his consciousness was before. An intense pressure still landed on him, acting upon his spiritual soul directly. However, at that moment, his spiritual soul radiated with brilliant divine halos. It was extremely dazzling and was indestructible. He stared intently at the sky above. Many dark stars appeared in the heavens. These dark stars seemed to form a dark silhouette that appeared in the starry sky. This dark silhouette had a pair of dark eyes that were staring at him. Right then, Yi Futian felt as though he was being stared at by a god. Rumble! Yi Futian's spiritual soul was sent flying back into his physical body. His heart was pounding. As he opened his eyes and stared up at the starry sky, there was an intense look of awe in his gaze. He seemed to have discovered another secret of the starry sky. His figure that was sitting cross-legged got up. Yi Futian's gaze seemed to pierce the endless space as it swept across the sky. His silver hair danced frenziedly. Behind him, Fangai and Blind Tai were shocked. What was going on? So there is more than one great emperor, he exclaimed internally. Yi Futian was astonished. He seemed to have unraveled the mystery of this part of the starry sky. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. In the endless starry sky above, there were actually silhouettes of other great emperors. In the endless starry sky above, there were actually silhouettes of other great emperors. However, the silhouettes of these great emperors were eclipsed by the silhouette of great Emperor Ziwei. Yi Futian recalled what the Renhuang had said to him before. Legend has it that great Emperor Ziwei ruled over the segment back in the day. He was also known as Star Lord of Ziwei. Beneath him, there were other great emperor-level cultivators. With the silhouette of great Emperor Ziwei present, the other great emperors were hidden in the vast starry sky. It seemed that back when great Emperor Ziwei sealed off the segment, it was not just him who left behind something in this starry cultivation court. The other great emperors under him also left behind their powers to be inherited. Only after doing so did they leave the segment and participate in the War of the Heavenly Path. That meant that, right now, the two cultivators had sensed the power of the great emperors. Starlight descended upon them, and they were now inheriting the power of the great emperors. Yi Futian suddenly wondered whether or not they had seen what he had seen. Or had they resonated with the stars by chance? He would not know the answer, only the two cultivators themselves would know. However, discovering this secret was crucial for comprehending the mystery of the starry sky. Yi Futian's figure went over to the cultivation court of one of the two cultivators. Then, just like before, his spiritual soul left his body and floated into the endless starry sky. He glanced around the star that was shining down on the cultivator. As expected, he once again saw a divine silhouette. The star that shot down divine light contained unparalleled power that resembled imperial glory. Was the star an imperial star? How many imperial stars were there here in this endless starry sky? His spiritual soul wandered over to other locations, no longer observing the cultivation of the two outstanding Renhuangs. They could sense the existence of the imperial stars and obtain the teachings of the great emperor. They were certainly also extraordinary and monstrous figures who stood at the peak. Although the most powerful figures from various realms were gathered here, there would only be a handful of figures like these two Renhuangs. Beneath the starry sky once again, Yi Futian sat down cross-legged. He sensed the heavenly might coming from the sky above. His expression became stern. It would certainly be challenging to sense the presence of an imperial star. He wanted to find other imperial stars in the starry sky. Right now, Yi Futian speculated that these imperial stars were crucial in unraveling the mystery of Great Emperor Ziwei. If he managed to find these imperial stars, he would most likely be able to discover the secrets in this segment which was ruled by Great Emperor Ziwei. Streaks of divine lights surrounded Yi Futian. His spiritual soul left his flesh and was enveloped by the divine light of the Great Path. The halo of the Great Emperor was faintly radiating. It was dazzling. His spiritual soul wandered in the endless starry sky. When Yi Futian's spiritual soul reached a spot, he paused, and his consciousness scanned the starry sky as he was surrounded by divine light. Soon, Yi Futian was completely immersed in the starry sky. He had forgotten about everything else. He was fully engaged in sensing the starry sky. It was vast, majestic, quiet, and barren. Countless stars twinkled in the starry sky. Yi Futian's consciousness drifted past many of them. There were innumerable stars in the sky. Attempting to locate the imperial stars among them was no different from finding a needle in the sea. It was a tough task. However, Yi Futian noticed a pattern when comprehending the cultivation of the other two Renhuangs just now. The imperial stars were each surrounded by a small segment that formed a silhouette. The silhouettes were similar to that of Great Emperor Ziwei. If Yi Futian could locate another silhouette amidst these endless stars, he would most likely be able to find an imperial star. However, even locating a silhouette was an arduous task in this vast starry sky. How did the other two Renhuangs do it? Aside from Yi Futian, many cultivators in this starry sky cultivation court had come to the higher sky. All of them were eager to discover the secrets of this starry sky after they witnessed the success of the two cultivators receiving the starlights. However, even though there were many cultivators around, they appeared exceptionally tiny here. After they dispersed to various directions, their existences were insignificant. They were like grains in the ocean. Moreover, it was challenging for the cultivators to communicate with the stars in the sky like the other two cultivators did. Nevertheless, everyone wanted to give it a try. The division of day and night did not exist in this place. Nobody paid heed to the passing of time either. Another day had passed without anyone noticing. The spiritual soul of Yi Futian was still observing the starry sky. He was determined to locate a small-scale segment that could form the silhouette of a human figure. Finally, he found a region. Some of the stars in this region were stars that formed part of the silhouette of Great Emperor Ziwei. However, if he looked at these stars in isolation, he could faintly make out the silhouette of another figure. Even though the figure was roughly traced out by the stars, Yi Futian could sense the solemn might emanating from it. The face that appeared in Yi Futian's mind had a majestic temperament. Was this figure the great emperor that used to rule this part of the Ziwei segmentum? Yi Futian wondered. After such a long time, he finally managed to identify a silhouette. Yi Futian's discovery made him respect the two cultivators who succeeded even more. Their achievement in discovering the silhouettes of the great emperors was indeed groundbreaking. This made Yi Futian realize that there were many talented people in the world. Many of them were as exceptional as Yi Futian himself. After finding the silhouette of the great emperor, the next step would be locating the imperial star. Based on Yi Futian's previous observation, the imperial star should be within the silhouette of the great emperor, so it would be somewhere in this region. Yi Futian's consciousness wandered to one of the stars. He found nothing. Then he moved on to the next star. Similarly, he detected nothing. This star was similar to the ones he sensed before. They were all barren stars without any trace of living beings or the path left by the great emperor. Yi Futian tried again and again. However, all his attempts resulted in failures. After a long while, he had gone to all the stars in this region, yet the outcome was demotivating. He found absolutely nothing. Floating in midair, Yi Futian gazed at the starry sky with a blank expression. There was no imperial star. How was this possible? Did something go wrong? Before this, he had explored the imperial stars that resonated with the other two cultivators. By right, he should be on the right track. However, the reality was right before his eyes. He had failed. None of the stars in this region was the one he was looking for. It was as though the imperial star did not exist at all. What exactly went wrong? Yi Futian thought to himself. He was puzzled. He didn't understand what went wrong. Was there a hidden star? Yi Futian recalled the situation he witnessed. If there was a hidden star, how could he detect its existence? Yi Futian looked at the two renwangs. In the distance, the two beams of starlight were still shining on both of them. It was as though the starlights would shine forever. Besides that, the path that each renhuang cultivated matched the divine power of the star that shone on them. This meant that the path of the cultivator and the path of the star surely resonated. When Yi Futian thought of this, the divine light of the great path circulated in his body. The world tree emitted a rustling sound in the life palace. Instantly, the vines of the ancient tree enveloped his body, emanating a divine halo. At the same time, countless wills appeared on Yi Futian's body of the great path. Behind him, both the sun and the moon shone brightly as he was surrounded by stars. Myriads of divine phenomena radiated from his body simultaneously. His consciousness was still locked onto the region in this segment. He was sensing his surroundings quietly. A moment later, twinkling starlight slowly lit up in a direction. It was as though a star suddenly appeared in the void of the starry sky. But Yi Futian's consciousness pounced towards the direction of the starlight. His entire body glowed even more brilliantly as divine light surrounded him. He could sense the star clearer now. The star grew brighter and brighter, as though a power was born from it. The power was communicating with Yi Futian across the sky. The two formed a resonance. He did it. Yi Futian's heart was palpitating wildly. He was one step away from success. This imperial star was about to be unraveled by him. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Yi Futian's consciousness swept out toward the stars. Gradually, he began to be able to see one star that shone with incomparable brightness. An unimaginably powerful golden storm swirled around it. This terrifying storm seemed strong enough to shatter anything it touched. Yi Futian's consciousness swept out toward the stars. Gradually, he began to be able to see one star that shone with incomparable brightness. An unimaginably powerful golden storm swirled around it. This terrifying storm seemed strong enough to shatter anything it touched. As his consciousness went out toward that star, the figure of the great emperor up in the sky gradually began to grow clearer. Its entire body was suffused with dazzling light, and golden radiance swirled around its majestic form. It gave off a sensation of boundless dominance. Although this imperial figure had appeared earlier, the feeling it gave off was completely different from back then. The same imperial image felt completely different at different times and looked different as well. It was becoming more and more frightening. It was as if it was truly a golden god with a radiance that could dazzle the entire world. Boom! At that moment, Yi Futian forcefully broke away from it. His consciousness had not made contact with the star. On the contrary, he had been pulling away from it. He opened his eyes. His heart was beating wildly, but there was a thoughtful look in his gaze. Would the inheritance that the great emperor had left behind be there only once and disappear, or would it exist there forever? He did not know, but his body was without equal, and his combat skills were practically unmatched. There were no opponents who could stand before him. Even inheriting the power of the great emperor would only be of limited use toward his advancement. It would not give him a way to discover how to transcend. The moment before, he suddenly had a thought. The power of the imperial star would be most suitable for blind Tai. How would it be if he were the one to inherit this power? It would certainly produce a transformation in him. Blind Tai had been betrayed and blinded back then, returning to the village with regret and sorrow. The master had healed him and helped him recover. But an injury like the one he had received was certainly still there. Moreover, Blind Tai's enemy was here today. Moku of the demon cloud was no weaker than him. If he wanted revenge, it would be quite difficult. If he inherited this power of the great emperor, he would have the opportunity to break through to the 9th tier. In addition to gaining the inheritance, he would be able to fight with the demon cloud. At that moment, Fongai and Blind Tai did not know what Futian was thinking. They had just seen brilliant radiance appear upon his body and thought that he had discovered something. However, Futian had suddenly pulled back, and everything seemed to return to the way it had been before. This made a look of surprise appear on Fongai's face. Blind Tai's face twitched as well. Although he could not see what was going on, he could sense it all very clearly. "Uncle Tai," they all heard Futian call. Blind Tai was stunned. He looked up to where Futian was, his eyebrow twitching. He looked very hesitant. "Come here," called Futian. Blind Tai did not understand, but he still moved over to where Futian was. He stood by Futian's side and asked, "What is the matter?" "I am going to pass on everything that I just understood to you. Why don't you try and do this, Uncle Tai?" Futian said to him telepathically. Blind Tai had still not fully grasped the meaning of Futian's words. He saw a beam of light appear from Futian's forehead, which then entered his own forehead. Suddenly, everything that Futian had just realized was transmitted into Blind Tai's mind. It was like he had seen it all himself. As long as he followed the path that Futian set before him, he would find it. After he saw all this in his mind, Blind Tai naturally understood what Futian had come across. He could already take the inheritance of the imperial star, but at the critical moment, Futian had given it up and called him over. What did this mean? He was giving the inheritance of the imperial star to him. "No," said Blind Tai, flatly refusing him. The inheritance of the imperial star was extremely precious. He could not accept it. "Uncle Tai, this thing is essential for cultivators, but I do not lack such things. Here in the starry region, my only target is to inherit the power of great Emperor Ziwei. The master of this imperial star must have once been the servant of great Emperor Ziwei," said Futian to him telepathically. "Moreover, don't you want to prove yourself worthy of reaching the peak of the Renhuang Plain? Don't you want to gain the ability to take revenge for your blinding?" Blind Tai was moved when he heard Futian's words. This was indeed his obsession. Moreover, he knew clearly that what Futian had said made a lot of sense. Futian already had the inheritance of the great emperor. He was the only one who had been able to comprehend the corpse of the Shenjia great emperor and forge a perfect divine body from it. And if Blind Tai were able to obtain the inheritance of a great emperor, he would have a great chance of achieving his vengeance. "Don't waste time. Whether or not you can make contact with the imperial star will depend on your skill," continued Futian. "I will continue to search for other imperial stars. Many of them must exist within this starry region." Blind Tai finally nodded. Since his eyes could not see, his other senses were more perceptive than most other cultivators. Moreover, he had great hope that he would succeed. He sat down cross-legged, feeling out toward the path where Futian had been searching before. With Futian helping him to broaden his horizons, it would be much easier. This was definitely an opportunity that Futian had given to him. Futian saw Blind Tai gripping his hands tightly. "Uncle Tai, do not be conflicted in your heart. Relax." He understood that his state of mind must be in turmoil. If that were the case, it would affect his senses. Blind Tai nodded and relaxed his fists. He gradually fell into a state where he forgot himself. He freed himself from conflicted thoughts. He did not think about anything like that. Yi Futian stood off to the side, seeking the positions of other imperial stars. If he could find all of them, could he unravel the inheritance that great Emperor Ziwei had left behind? Moreover, he wanted to see if Blind Tai could complete this step. If he could do it, he would allow other people to see if they could do it when he found more imperial stars. Fang Gai, who was standing off to the side, did not know what was going on. The two people were communicating telepathically. After all, the matter of the imperial star was too important, and there were many cultivators there in the starry dimension. They did not want to let anyone else hear and create bad ideas in their minds. But compared to Blind Tai's previously downcast expression, solemnity and gratitude were written on his face now. Given the scene before him, he was able to guess a little bit of what had happened. He looked over at Yi Futian. In his heart, he thought that Four Corner Village had not looked at the wrong person. He had not chosen wrong, and neither had his master. This cultivator who had come to the village from another realm was the true future of Four Corner Village. Perhaps he could even transform the village. Time passed bit by bit. All the cultivators were searching through the starry sky. After a while, Yi Futian found another starry region where he saw a faint figure. This had taken a lot less time than before. Clearly, after gaining a bit of experience, Yi Futian was starting to become familiar with this. And at the same time, not far from Yi Futian, incredibly brilliant light of the Great Path was flashing all over Blind Tai's body. Up in the sky, a star was growing brighter and brighter, becoming extremely radiant. It became golden, as if it was made entirely of gold. Beams of light shone down, all of them shooting towards where Blind Tai was. In the next instant, everyone could only see a single beam of light pierce down from the starry sky. Stars began to fall as well, falling directly toward Blind Tai. Boom! An extremely brilliant divine radiance covered Blind Tai's body. Although he could not see, he could sense an incomparably powerful divine figure standing in the sky like a god of war. A golden army covered it, and it was filled with a sense of infinite power. It was breathtaking. He had succeeded. Yi Futian had opened the way, and he had followed his path. He could now feel the existence of the imperial star. Powerful golden light pierced through his body. As he was bathed in that light, Blind Tai could feel his body filling up with unimaginable power. Afterward, Fang Gai's heart was beating wildly. And he was not the only one. All of the people from Four Corner Village's hearts were racing. They went over to Blind Tai. The cultivators of the Heavenly Mandate Academy went over as well. This was a man who always protected Yi Futian. Father! Fang Huan went over to Fang Gai's side. There was a look of surprise in his eyes and a little bit of doubt. This is the opportunity that Futian gave to this guy, Fang Gai said to him telepathically. Fang Huan's heart trembled slightly. He had directly given the inheritance of the great emperor to Blind Tai. Previously, Fang Gai and Blind Tai had volunteered to protect Yi Futian. They had not had any intention of cultivating. They did not want to come to this place to gain anything. They just wanted to protect Yi Futian. However, Blind Tai had inherited the power of a great emperor. When one planted flowers intentionally, they would not explode. When one unintentionally planted willows, they would spring to life. Blind Tai, who had not wanted to cultivate, had received a cultivation opportunity that most people could only dream of. And at that moment, the cultivators from other realms were all staring at Blind Tai. Someone said, "Who is that?" The vast majority of them did not know Blind Tai. It seemed that he had come with Yi Futian. Why had he suddenly received the inheritance of the great emperor? How had he done it? If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 2227. Another Imperial Star. Chapter 2227. Another Imperial Star. Soon, many people had realized that Blind Tai was the cultivator who had protected Yi Futian before. After all, many people knew Yi Futian nowadays. When he had gone up to the highest point in the starry sky, all of them knew who he was. That is the man who protected Yi Futian, someone said outright. Why is he the one who received the inheritance? Many people looked surprised at this. Yi Futian's previous pronouncement had shocked them all. As soon as he went up, they had guessed that Emperor Ziwei was scattered through the stars in the heavens. And Yi Futian was the only one who had been able to comprehend the corpse of Emperor Shenjia. Thus, if Yi Futian received the inheritance, perhaps they would not have been so shocked. But now it was Blind Tai who had received, someone whose eyes could not see, someone who had once protected Yi Futian. Could it be that his senses are stronger because he is blind? Someone guessed. No, said someone looking up into the sky. Yi Futian asked him to come up there. He had seen with his own eyes what Yi Futian had done there. After that, Yi Futian had asked Blind Tai to come up. What do you mean? Someone beside the Renhuang who had spoken asked, a look of surprise on his face. That is impossible. Who would give the inheritance of a great emperor to someone else? Moreover, was Yi Futian really so supremely powerful? Not only had he discovered the deep secret of the imperial star, but he had given it over to someone else? This was too shocking. There were so many cultivators there who wanted to find the imperial stars but could not do it. They certainly would not give that chance to someone else. After speaking, they could not help but look back up to Yi Futian. They saw that he was not far from Blind Tai. He was cultivating up there in that field of stars. He was looking at Blind Tai, a smile upon his face. Although he had opened the way for him, Blind Tai had still needed to rely on himself to sense the imperial star, which was not a simple matter. Previously, the power of the two cultivators who had discovered the imperial star was the same as the imperial star's power that they had come in contact with, which is why they produced a resonance with it. Thus, Yi Futian had let Blind Tai inherit the power of this imperial star since his own power made him well suited to discovering that imperial star. Anyone else would not have been guaranteed success. These were his main reasons for doing this. But Uncle Tai himself had only been able to do this because of his extraordinary understanding. Many cultivators flashed over there towards where Blind Tai was floating. This scene made Yi Futian and those with him frown slightly, and there was a strange look in their eyes. They looked upon the people coming towards them warily. What did this mean? No one had dared disturb the two people before. So why were they coming towards Blind Tai now? Yi Futian naturally saw this. He knew that the two cultivators who had made contact with the imperial star before were exceptional, and their backgrounds were quite extraordinary. Thus, no one dared to have any ideas about disturbing them. Now, Blind Tai had made contact with an imperial star. Were they getting ideas this time? He temporarily stopped trying to make contact with a new imperial star and turned his gaze to the people who were coming. He could see that they were continuing forward towards where Blind Tai was. He could see that many cultivators were below him, all of them staring at Blind Tai. Fang Gai and the others were guarding the perimeter and watching in all directions. Seeing that the others were still continuing forward, they could not help but release some of their power. Fang Gai said, "He is cultivating, so I hope you will not disturb him. If you have something to say to him, why don't you wait until he is finished and then say it?" "I want to ask, how did you make contact with this star?" A Renhuang asked Blind Tai in a loud, clear voice. Fang Gai frowned. These people clearly did not have good intentions. When they saw that Blind Tai had inherited the imperial power, they had gotten ideas. They wanted to know the secret of how to make contact with the imperial stars. Boom! At that moment, a divine light shone down upon Blind Tai. His body moved slightly as he turned to face the man who had spoken. A terrifying aura spread out from him as a divine hammer appeared up in the sky, filled with world-destroying divine power. The divine hammer was bathed in the radiance of the imperial star, and its light filled the heavens. A terrifying burst of power shot out from within it, pressing everything down. All the Renhuangs in the area around it felt their hearts begin to beat faster. This was not right. He was bathed in the radiance of the imperial star. It was like he could draw power out of it. In that case, since Blind Tai was already at the 8th tier with a perfect divine will, how many people there would be able to compete with him? Boom! An even more terrifying power seeped out. Everyone could see the divine hammer growing larger until it covered the sky. It was like a heavenly hammer of stars, with enough power to destroy an entire realm. It floated in the air above everyone's heads. The Renhuang who had spoken could feel his heart racing, and a frightened look came over his face. If that hammer fell, would he be able to withstand it? Finally, terrifying divine radiance burst out of the hammer and crashed down from the sky, crushing an entire area and splitting the imperial star into two parts. Dazzling radiance flowed out from the starry sky, cutting through the world of stars and falling not far from where all the Renhuangs were standing. A wild windstorm blew towards them, surrounding them with the power of the great path. Still unable to withstand the terrifying storm, everyone retreated into the distance, their clothes flapping about them wildly in the wind. After a while, the storm finally disappeared. Everyone looked up and saw that the hammer was gone as well. Blind Tai was still bathed in the light of the imperial star and cultivating. He had turned and was no longer facing them. Everyone's hearts beat faster. They naturally knew that the hammer had merely been a threat and that it would have actually struck them. If it had, probably not even one of them could have withstood it. After making contact with the imperial star, Blind Tai had been able to directly use its power. This put him in an unassailable position. No one could steal his inheritance, and he would not succumb to anyone's threats. It seemed like anyone who had ideas about doing anything to him would find that task impossible. The cultivators all left the area. They would have to rely on themselves to be able to sense the imperial stars. Yi Futian relaxed after he had witnessed this scene. He looked over at Blind Tai. Divine light was falling from the imperial star in the sky. This light contained divine power within it. That was why he had been able to wield that hammer and threaten all those heroes. Yi Futian flashed away, returning to his previous position. When Blind Tai had made contact with the imperial star, he had felt the existence of yet another imperial star. He sat cross-legged once again, gathering his spiritual energy. He returned to a state of forgetting himself. This time, many people were all watching him. Many of them guessed that Blind Tai had only been able to make contact with the imperial star because of Yi Futian. So now that Yi Futian was continuing to cultivate, they naturally wanted to watch and see if he could do it again. His senses entered into the endless starry sky. The stars outlined a vague image. Above this vague image, two hands were holding something, but he could not see clearly what it was. This time, Yi Futian once again unleashed the power of the Great Path. The light of the Great Path flowed. However, he did not feel an imperial star like he had before. He could not produce any resonance. Could it be that his cultivation was not well suited to this imperial star? As he thought of this, his aura began to boil as he increased the power of the Great Path to the next level. However, he still could not sense anything. This made Yi Futian frown. According to his previous experience, he should not be able to make any mistakes. Since he had found the image of the emperor, the imperial star should be right there. What kind of power did this imperial star hold? Yi Futian remembered that he still had a kind of power that he had not unleashed. Suddenly, endless guqin strings appeared in the air, and a stormy melody swept out from them, becoming guqin notes. At this moment, they seemed to form rhythmic sorcery. Rhythmic sorcery? A surprised look came over Yi Futian's face. This imperial star had something to do with rhythmic sorcery? As he thought of this, the strings of the Great Path trembled, forming music. It was the song of the lost divine. A powerful storm of rhythmic sorcery covered his body of the Great Path. Suddenly, the image in the sky gradually grew clearer. He could once again see the figure of an emperor clearly. It was holding something. It was holding a guqin. His consciousness was able to perceive the emperor's existence. This imperial star was in the shape of a guqin, and a terrifying rhythmic sorcery storm was upon it. Could he inherit it? Of the people here besides him, no one was skilled or powerful at rhythmic sorcery. They probably could not connect with this imperial star. He retracted his consciousness, and a thoughtful expression came over him. He would be a bit careful when it came to the inheritance of a great emperor. There was the potential to create a powerful entity here. If he inherited it himself, he could increase his strength, but Yi Futian felt that would be a little pitiful. He looked down. It seemed like only one of the people that he knew had the chance to inherit this imperial star. But the two of them were not close. Thinking of this, Futian flashed downward. Over there, a beautiful young woman was standing calmly. She looked surprised when Futian came over to him. She did not understand why he was doing this. "Greetings, goddess," said Futian. This goddess was, in fact, the goddess Taihua. He had an idea. Of course, he could not lightly give the inheritance of a great emperor to someone he did not know. That would be up to the goddess Taihua. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Tip: you can use left, right, A and D keyboard keys to browse between chapters. "Renhuang Yi, what pointers do you have for me?" Goddess Taihua asked Futian. Futian observed her expression. Goddess Taihua seemed to wear a look of caution. Back then they had fought each other before. During the Donghua banquet, the two of them had fought using divine melodies. "Renhuang Yi, what pointers do you have for me?" Goddess Taihua asked Futian. Futian observed her expression. Goddess Taihua seemed to wear a look of caution. Back then they had fought each other before. During the Donghua banquet, the two of them had fought using divine melodies. Futian also knew that Ning Yuan, the domain chief of the Donghua domain, was ambitious. He wanted complete control over all the forces in the domain. He meant for Ning Hua and goddess Taihua to be married. As for what Taihua Mountain thought about this, Futian was unsure. However, the Donghua domain chief's manner was destined to be Futian's enemy. He naturally did not want to see the forces of the domain chief's manner grow stronger. It can't be considered pointers. Back during the Donghua banquet, I exchanged notes with goddess over songs. I thought we were quite agreeable, so I wanted to get to know goddess better. In the future, if we have the opportunity, we could discuss music and learn from each other. What do you think, goddess? Futian suggested. Goddess Taihua's beautiful gaze revealed a strange look. She looked seriously at Futian as thoughts surfaced in her mind. Futian was currently considered to be in his prime. During the Donghua banquet, he had displayed his caliber and was well known in the Donghua domain, gaining fame overnight. Later, when he went to the Shangqing domain, he also became famous there. His talent was not less than Ninghua. Now, he was approaching her. His goal for doing so was enough to cause goddess Taihua's imagination to run wild. Far off in the sky, Ninghua was looking over in this direction. His gaze was extremely sharp. His figure also floated over as he stared at Futian. Was Futian already acting so presumptuous? It was not just him. The members of the Donghua domain all knew the relationship between the three parties. They could not help but feel intrigued. The beautiful gazes of Qin Qing and the other goddesses of Divine Palace of Fluttering Snow revealed strange looks. Was Futian trying to undermine Ninghua? Was he purely trying to make Ninghua look bad? Renhuang Yi, you are too kind. With your attainments, I feel that I have nothing worth teaching you, answered goddess Taihua. She naturally also sensed that the atmosphere around her was off. She kept a distant aura as she said this. Futian also understood goddess Taihua's intent. She was turning him down. Goddess Taihua did not want to have anything to do with him. If that was the case, he did not need to reveal his intention. The other party's attitude was already made very clear. All right. Sorry to have disturbed you, goddess, said Futian as he bowed slightly. He then turned and left. All throughout this exchange, his etiquette had been thoughtful. Goddess Taihua felt strange as she looked at his silhouette. She did not know what Futian was thinking and why he had suddenly approached her. Many of the members of the Donghua domain were puzzled. With Futian's level of cultivation, he couldn't be trying to court her. Why had he suddenly approached goddess Taihua? What was his intent? Right then, they saw Futian return to where he was high in the sky. He closed his eyes and silently cultivated. Not long after, divine light descended upon Futian from the heavens above. Instantly, countless gazes were drawn over towards him. They all revealed looks of astonishment. That is, in the starry sky, the various cultivators felt their hearts thumping. He had communicated with another imperial star? Many people looked up at the imperial star in the sky. They could faintly make out a divine silhouette. For a moment, an astonishing storm of rhythmic sorcery appeared around Yi Futian's figure. The sound of a guqin could actually be heard. The frightening rhythmic sorcery swept out. The cultivators in the starry sky could sense its beat. A guqin seemed to appear in the starry sky. When Goddess Taihua saw this scene, her face turned pale instantly. She seemed to have caught on to something. Aside from her, all the cultivators from the Donghua domain also realized why Yi Futian had approached her just now. Before this, the blind Renhuang, who followed and protected Yi Futian, inherited an imperial star, said Qin Qin. Her heart was palpitating wildly as she looked at Jiang Yueli and Chu Hanshi beside her. The two were also staring at her with trembling hearts. Did such a monstrous figure really exist? From the looks of it, Yi Futian is indeed talented, Jiang Yueli whispered. He can locate the imperial stars, and he chooses to let others inherit the teachings from them. Before this, Yi Futian has most likely been given the chance to inherit the imperial star to the blind Renhuang. As she said this, she was astonished by his act. Giving up the teachings of the great emperors so that others could inherit them? He had been so casual about it. Yi Futian also seemed to have the ability to easily locate an imperial star. Both points were enough to make their hearts tremble. Seemingly thinking of something, their gazes shifted towards the direction of Goddess Taihua. The imperial star that Yi Futian was communicating with right now was passing on the way of rhythm. They then thought of the fact that he had wanted to give up the teachings of an imperial star to someone else. Then, why had he come searching for Goddess Taihua, who was similarly proficient in rhythmic sorcery and cultivated the divine melody? The answer was on the tip of their tongues. They also noticed that Goddess Taihua's facial expression was becoming extremely interesting to look at. She seemed somewhat pale. Clearly, they understood that Goddess Taihua had missed an opportunity just now. Yi Futian had actually thought of giving up the teachings of the imperial star to Goddess Taihua. He was not trying to court her. He was clearly testing Goddess Taihua's attitude before giving her a great fateful encounter. However, such an encounter had just slipped away from her. Goddess Taihua's distant attitude had caused Yi Futian to give up on his previous thought and instead inherit the teachings of the imperial star himself. They wondered how Goddess Taihua was feeling right now. Right then, Goddess Taihua had extremely complicated emotions. She wondered why Yi Futian had chosen her. Why would he give away such a great fateful encounter to a stranger like her? From the way Yi Futian acted just now, he had the intention to do so. Otherwise, he would not have come looking for her and then returned to inherit the teachings of the imperial star. She was extremely conflicted inside at the moment. Even the top Renhuangs would waver and would not be able to calm down quickly if this occurred to them. What did a fateful encounter with the great emperor signify? Especially for cultivators like her, it was too important. Moreover, it was an imperial star that had the way of rhythm that she was compatible with. Did she regret her decision? Of course, she regretted it. How could she not regret it? Those were the teachings of a great emperor. It could be said that no one else was feeling more conflicted than she was at the moment. Nearby, Ninghua's expression turned extremely ugly when he saw Goddess Taihua's expression change. He naturally also understood what had transpired. He looked up at Yi Futian. How did he manage to do it? It was not just Ninghua. Everyone wanted to know the answer to this question. As they witnessed Yi Futian bathing in the divine halo, the cultivators walked over towards where he was and looked at the silhouette in the sky. If communicating with one imperial star was a coincidence, suppose he managed to do so with a second imperial star? In this starry sky, there was actually someone who could locate imperial stars and casually communicate with them. The crowd naturally knew what this meant. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 2229. What the Ziwei Imperial Palace was thinking about. Chapter 2229. What the Ziwei Imperial Palace was thinking about. None of the cultivators wanted to fight Yi Futian anymore. They had already learned their lesson from blind Tai. When one was basking in the divine light of the imperial stars, one could use the energy from that divine light. If they tried to attack him at such a time, they were bound to lose miserably. Even though they didn't intend to attack Yi Futian, they remained on guard in the area surrounding Yi Futian and kept their gaze fixed on him. Everything that Yi Futian had done had too great an impact. He was now the only one who could communicate with 2 imperial stars, and he had even given away the enlightenment of one of them. This made everyone else guess that Yi Futian was very likely to be someone who could also comprehend a 3rd or even a 4th imperial star. They might even have the chance to decode the secrets of this starry sky. If all the imperial stars were found, would it be possible to find what Ziwei the Great left behind? Because of this, the way everyone else looked at Yi Futian had changed. This young man held the key to possibly unraveling the secrets of this place. But it was going to take quite some time to comprehend the imperial stars. Of course, Yi Futian knew that all the other cultivators would start getting some ideas about him, but he couldn't be bothered with them. As long as he continued to find imperial stars and communicate with them, he would end up attracting the attention of others anyway. There was no way of hiding that from all these cultivators. But none of them would do anything to him because everyone in this place wanted to unlock the secrets of Ziwei the Great. As he quietly basked in the divine light of the imperial star, he felt like he had stepped onto the star itself. An incredible burst of rhythms appeared and tapped out rhythm patterns in his mind. Out of all the zither tunes that Yi Futian had heard of before, the only one that could compare with these intense rhythms was the divine melody Taihua of Taihua Mountain, reminding him of Taihua Goddess. It was a pity that the Taihua Goddess didn't want to interact with him and kept a distance from him. Since that was the case, he wasn't going to give his precious enlightenment away for nothing. He had originally thought that if the Taihua Goddess intended to get close to him and become friends with him, Taihua Mountain could ally with him. With the support of the Taihua Skylord, they would have yet another powerful source of strength. But of course, all that was just his wishful thinking earlier. It wasn't worth mentioning anymore now. As he continued to bask in the divine light, Yi Futian's mind and body could feel a very heavy rhythm weigh on him. The body of that great emperor seemed to be imprinted in his mind, and a frightening song of the great path emanated from his body. It was as if the great emperor had left behind a powerful will here. A scene seemed to appear within Yi Futian's mind. In the midst of the great burst of rhythms, a heavy weight shattered everything. All the stars in the sky were destroyed and became nothing but dust under the weight of the rhythms. The pulsating reverberation of the notes carried the most terrifying power in the world, one that could destroy everything. Is this what it looks like when the way of rhythm reaches its peak? Thought Yi Futian to himself. Everywhere around him had been completely destroyed. Even the vast sky of innumerable stars had been turned into powder from the impact of the rhythms, as if the whole world had fallen apart. It was a truly terrifying sight to behold. Yi Futian was completely immersed in that mode, and his senses had invaded the imperial star as if he was lying in the midst of the burst of rhythms. As the divine light from above continued to shine on him, the divine power of the rhythms washed over Yi Futian's body, causing the storm of rhythms around him to become more and more frightening. As time went by, the cultivators surrounding him also walked away. They could keep standing here and waiting. There were other imperial stars, so they wanted to try their luck with those. After one day, yet another legendary figure had successfully established communication with another imperial star. He was the envy of all the cultivators. 5 imperial stars had already been taken. Several high-level cultivators from various factions of power were gathered in one area. They looked up at the sky, and one of them said, "That was the 5th one." If each imperial star represents one great emperor, that means that the things that 5 great emperors left behind have all been discovered. According to legend, how many great emperors were under Ziwei the Great back then? Asked another in a low voice. 8, replied one of them. According to legend, 8 great emperors, including Tiankui and Wenxiu, assisted Ziwei the Great and ruled over the segment. They were incredibly powerful and were certainly one of the most powerful of their time. Ziwei the Great was also a great emperor who wielded great power. If each imperial star truly represents one great emperor as guest and the imperial stars that represent 5 great emperors have already been found, that means there should be 3 imperial stars left. Only 3 left, someone murmured. There were fewer and fewer opportunities left. But of course, even finding these imperial stars were a problem in themselves. At the same time, many other high-level cultivators were still gathered outside Ziwei Imperial Palace. Some of them sat by themselves, while some of them were chatting with one another. To people of their level, the time that passed over the last few days was very short and was only enough for a brief meditation. Ziwei Imperial Palace had arranged places for all of them to rest, but since it was rare for all of them to be together, they wanted to exchange pointers on cultivating the Great Path with one another. "I wonder what's happened inside. Where have they been sent to?" murmured one of the high-level cultivators. The best cultivators from each place went in, so if Ziwei the Great has really left any incredible secrets behind, I'm sure people with their ability would be able to find it. Yes, that's possible. But will the Ziwei Imperial Palace? One of them wondered if Ziwei Imperial Palace would pull any stunts on them. "Don't worry. I have sent them to where Ziwei the Great used to cultivate and have left them on their own. We will not interfere in any way," a melodious and surreal voice said from the Ziwei Imperial Palace. It sounded like everything that was happening was within his control. The high-level cultivator who spoke earlier gave the representative from Ziwei Imperial Palace an apologetic smile and said, "Palace Lord, I hope you don't take offense. I was too narrow-minded in my thinking." The Palace Lord of the Ziwei Imperial Palace didn't respond. He sat cross-legged in the middle of the Ziwei Imperial Palace with several cultivators in front of him. The Palace Lord of the Ziwei Imperial Palace asked, "How are things?" "5 imperial stars have already been discovered and understood," replied one of them. "These are truly the best cultivators the outside world has to offer. I hope that they will be able to complete everything successfully," said the Palace Lord of the Ziwei Imperial Palace. He didn't seem surprised at all and sounded like everything was within his control. All these years, the Ziwei Imperial Palace had also been trying to understand the secrets of Ziwei the Great. However, they had not been able to find what Ziwei the Great had left behind. Now that cultivators from all lands had come forth, they hoped that the things that Ziwei the Great had left behind could be discovered. Nobody believed more strongly than them that Ziwei the Great must have left something behind because they were from the Ziwei Imperial Palace themselves. None of the cultivators among the stars knew anything about what was happening in the outside world, and they certainly had no idea what the Ziwei Imperial Palace was thinking about. The cultivators who had received enlightenment from the Imperial Stars completed their cultivation one after another. Yi Futian stopped as well. The divine light around his body faded, and he stopped comprehending the power of the Imperial Star. Also, he felt that the power from this Imperial Star could last forever and wasn't something that would end after one session of comprehension. That meant that other people could continue to gain power from this Imperial Star later. These great emperors had left all this power behind back then, probably in the hope of helping their descendants. This also probably meant that all these years, there should have been several people just like himself, coming to the Ziwei Imperial Palace, discovering the existence of Imperial Stars, and gained enlightenment. The moment he completed his cultivation, he saw a group of high-level cultivators walk towards him. Everyone was looking at him from all directions. Nobody else before this had been treated this way, not even Blind Tai. Yi Futian was the only one. But of course, he knew why too. He was the only one who had found 2 Imperial Stars and had given one away too. After finding out about such a thing, there was no way the other cultivators would just let it be. "Renhuang Yi, I have heard much about how incredibly gifted you are. I didn't expect you to have such a powerful comprehension ability even in this place. You were the one who found 2 Imperial Stars, right?" One of them asked him directly. Yi Futian looked at the other party and just nodded without hiding anything from him. He couldn't deny anything even if he wanted to. None of the cultivators here were stupid. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Tip: you can use left, right, A and D keyboard keys to browse between chapters. Chapter 2230, One Appearing After Another. Chapter 2230, One Appearing After Another. Everyone had a slight shift in their eyes and a tremor in their hearts when they saw Yi Futian nod. After that, someone else asked him directly, "Ren Huangyi, could I ask how you managed to do that? Do you have any tips to share?" Yi Futian shook his head and replied, "5 imperial stars have appeared, and I'm sure everyone has already discovered some of their secrets. Finding an imperial star in the sky relies solely on one's senses. As long as you sense the existence of a great emperor and get a sense of where the imperial star is positioned, then you can use your subconscious to communicate with the imperial star, where you can will the power of the imperial star to pour down and baptize you in it." Everyone hummed to themselves for a moment after hearing what Yi Futian said. Even though they all knew this, very few people had been able to pull it off. But when Yi Futian explained it, he made it sound like it was something straightforward. "The imperial star I sensed earlier was a rhythm star. Anyone who specializes in cultivating rhythm can try releasing your way of rhythm and see if you create any sort of resonance with that imperial star. Then you can start communicating with that imperial star," Yi Futian continued. He sounded gentle and elegant as he seemed to be sharing with them everything he knew. He didn't look like he was trying to hide anything from the other cultivators. "Ren Huangyi, are you saying that more than one person can understand this imperial star?" One of them had realized what Yi Futian was implying with these words and couldn't help but look slightly surprised. That would mean that all of them had a chance at comprehending the imperial star. "That's right." Yi Futian nodded. "According to the feeling I got earlier, that should be the case. The existence of the imperial star can cleanse those who cultivate and help one to metamorphosize. I believe everyone had roughly seen where the imperial star is, so all of you can give it a shot." One of them looked deep in thought. "If that's the case, then doesn't that mean we could also unleash our senses towards the imperial star when you are communicating with it? I've not actually tried that before. But if you really rely on others to first start communications with the imperial star, then try to come in later, wouldn't you end up getting swallowed up by the imperial star instead? Its energy might just gobble you whole," remarked Yi Futian. Many others pondered this possibility seriously. It seemed possible as well. There's probably some of the will of the ancient great emperor of Ziwei segment left behind on the imperial star, so when communicating with the imperial star, you're really trying to resonate with that bit of will left behind. If both sides are unable to resonate well, I would think that the chances of getting swallowed instead are very high, so I hope everyone will consider this method very carefully first," Yi Futian continued. After hearing what he said, everyone's expressions became more serious than before. Could they only rely on their own strength, after all? But that didn't seem to be the case either. Before this, Yi Futian had allowed Blind Tai to receive the power of the imperial star. If Ren Huangyi is willing to help, would things be easier to manage? Like what happened to your friend earlier, a Ren Huang standing further off spoke up. The look in many of their eyes began to burn excitedly. This was indeed what many of them were thinking about. In theory, that might be the case. But I still stick by what I said. It really still depends on one's ability to perceive and strength of perception and whether or not the power your own body has cultivated can resonate well with the imperial star. Otherwise, I would think that you won't sense a single thing," continued Yi Futian. "In that case, could I ask if Ren Huangyi is willing to help all of us to sense the position of those 2 imperial stars?" asked another person. "That's right. Since you've already inherited the power of this imperial star, then could you also help us to seize this very rare opportunity?" Yet another person chimed in. It seemed like all of them were hoping to use Yi Futian as a shortcut to gain the powers from these imperial stars. "Well, that's theoretically possible." Yi Futian smiled faintly and looked at the person who last spoke. "But I'm not familiar with any of you, so what good does it do me if I do this? After all, the power of these imperial stars is so precious, so it's only natural that I would give it to someone close to me. I'm sure all of you can understand that." "Ren Huangyi, what do you want then?" asked one of them. "I want someone to kill the vice chief of the Donghua domain chief's manor. Ninghua. As long as I can sense any imperial star, I will help him," said Yi Futian with a smile on his face. Some distance away, Ninghua's pupils constricted slightly when he heard these words. His gaze was chilly as he glared straight at Yi Futian from afar. Murderous thoughts surged through his body. Both he and Yi Futian wanted to kill each other, but some issues prevented them from doing so directly. So now, Yi Futian was hoping to make use of someone else to get rid of Ninghua instead. If anyone here were willing to kill Ninghua, that would be someone who dared to go up against the power of the Donghua domain chief's manor. So even if this person made it out of this place, he would become sworn enemies with the Donghua domain chief's manor. In that case, not only would Ninghua die here, but the Donghua domain chief's manor would also have several new powerful enemies. Why go through so much trouble? Just take him down. Isn't that easier? Said Ninghua icily from a distance. If anyone wants to do that, then you will be treated the same way as Ninghua, Yi Futian responded. The meaning of his words was clear. If anyone tried to kill him, then the assailant would also be part of this deal. Besides, I heard from everyone else here that Ziwei the Great had 8 great emperors under him. If this corresponds to 8 imperial stars, it means that there are still 3 more imperial stars that have not appeared yet. Doesn't everyone want to find the last 3 imperial stars to see if we've got a chance at deciphering the secrets of Ziwei the Great? Yi Futian went on, revealing exactly what everyone was thinking about. 5 of the 8 imperial stars had already been found, so it was natural for them to look forward to the remaining 3. If they were really able to obtain the things that Ziwei the Great had left behind, the rest was insignificant. Ziwei the Great had cultivated in this cultivation space. The great path will that the 8 great emperors under him had left behind was already so incredible. What about the things that Ziwei the Great left behind himself? Surely they were great beyond compare, right? All of you can consider the conditions I offered earlier. Then, we'll join hands in decoding the deep secrets that Ziwei the Great left behind in this starry space. Yi Futian continued speaking. Many of them had their eyes focused on Yi Futian and had different thoughts going through their minds. We'll do it then, said one of them. It was a cultivator with an extraordinary aura around him. The rest didn't raise any objections, so someone else said, in that case, Renhuang Yi, why don't you see if you can communicate with the other imperial stars? Thanks for your understanding, everyone. Yi Futian nodded. Every single person here was the best from their region, and their magnanimity was above the average person. Besides, all of them were here for only one thing, to comprehend what Ziwei the Great had left behind. The only thing that everyone wanted to do in this place was to unravel the secrets of Ziwei the Great. Yi Futian stood beneath the starry skies and looked up. He closed his eyes and sent his consciousness into the vast skies. There were only 3 left, so they might be hard to find. Just as Yi Futian had thought, it took him a really long time before he finally spotted the image of another great emperor. He found another one in the tiny segment he was observing. Yi Futian joined up the location of this star to the position of the other 5 stars and looked at their formation. He noticed that they seemed to be at different parts of Ziwei the Great's body but seemed to form a unique sort of shape. He wasn't sure if this formation was connected to anything. What sort of power would be in this imperial star? Thought Yi Futian to himself. He unleashed an immense amount of great path aura to sense exactly where that imperial star was. When the other cultivators saw that Yi Futian had unleashed his great path aura, they all turned to look at him. Was he about to discover yet another imperial star? Just then, divine light suddenly poured down from a different location and shone brilliantly. All of them turned to look in that direction instead, and their hearts trembled violently. Someone else had been able to locate an imperial star, and he had done it before Yi Futian did. That meant that as long as Yi Futian successfully communicated with the imperial star he had sensed, 7 imperial stars would have been found, and they would be left with just one last imperial star. Then everything that the 8 great emperors under Ziwei the Great would have surfaced. Would Yi Futian be successful this time? If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 2231, The Last Star. Chapter 2231, The Last Star. This time, Yi Futian did not hide the power of the Great Path. He also unleashed his detection to its utmost limit as he charged towards the silhouette of the Great Emperor. Soon, the vague silhouette of the Great Emperor gradually became clearer. However, it was surrounded by layers of turbulent air. Yi Futian's heart skipped a beat. Yi Futian was surprised. What he detected this time was a domineering demonic qi. Was there a demon monarch among the 8 great emperor-level figures who served under Great Emperor Ziwei? He continued to explore. The silhouette of the great emperor became clear to him. As expected, even though the great emperor appeared human, he seemed demonic. One could tell from a glance that the great emperor was not a human cultivator. The demonic qi churned, and Yi Futian could vaguely sense a flaming storm of demonic qi. An enigmatic star twinkled. Suddenly, a terrifying demonic might swept towards Yi Futian. It was as though countless demons appeared before his eyes. In an instant, his consciousness crumbled and was pushed back into his body by the might. Such an overbearing might, Yi Futian mumbled as his pupils contracted. He opened his eyes and looked at the heavens above. His gaze was exceptionally sharp. He didn't continue trying to communicate with the star. Instead, he turned around and looked in another direction. The cultivators from the Heavenly Mandate Academy who came together with him were standing there. "Third brother, Long Chen, Jun, and Zi Feng, come over here," said Yi Futian. They immediately revealed strange expressions. Despite that, they still dashed over in a flash. "This imperial star is a demonic star. I will pass on all that I have experienced to you. Try to sense it and see who can communicate with the imperial star first. If you manage to do so, you can proceed to receive the baptism of power from the imperial star," instructed Yi Futian. He also did not know who would be the most suitable candidate. He could only let them attempt together to see who could sense it first. Although the others would still have a chance to sense it after Yi Futian had done so, there was still one more imperial star that had yet to be found. He was prepared to seek out that imperial star first. If he had time later, he would then inherit the power of these imperial stars and receive baptisms of power. "Younger brother, what about yourself?" Gu Donglu asked. "Third brother, there is still one imperial star that has yet to be discovered," Yi Futian replied. Gu Donglu immediately understood his intention. He nodded his head and said, "All right, we will give it a try. You go on ahead and find that last imperial star." Replied Yi Futian as he nodded his head. Then, his divine consciousness passed on all that he had sensed to the others. As to who would manage to sense the imperial star first, it depended on their fortune. Of course, if they had time later, they still had opportunities to do so. It was just that they did not know how much time Ziwei Imperial Palace would give them. That being said, they had been in this space for quite some time. Ziwei Imperial Palace was rather generous, actually allowing them to comprehend the power of the imperial stars here. Nevertheless, that did not seem to be an issue. The power of the imperial stars was eternal. They could not take the imperial stars away from this space. Even if they were baptized in the power of the imperial stars, it still did not affect Ziwei Imperial Palace. After Yi Futian gave his instructions, he left the region. Gu Donglu and the others sat there and comprehended. In the starry sky, the cultivators who saw this scene were envious. Only the people close to Yi Futian received such treatment. They clearly knew that Yi Futian had already sensed the presence of another imperial star. However, he had not comprehended its power for himself. Like before, he had passed on this opportunity to others. Since this imperial star had been discovered, it seemed that there was only one last imperial star that had yet to be found. From the looks of it, Yi Futian planned to find where this last imperial star was. As expected, Yi Futian's silhouette appeared in another location. He continued to comprehend the various stars in the sky. If all 8 imperial stars were found, would the mystery of Great Emperor Ziwei be unraveled? In the endless starry sky, the stars twinkled and shone. Yi Futian's senses wandered the starry sky. With his previous experience, he was confident that if there existed a small segment in the silhouette of the Great Emperor, he should be able to find it. His consciousness took the form of his silhouette as he floated around the vast starry sky. He traversed across countless regions of stars as he searched carefully. Right now, Yi Futian was completely immersed in his search. Everything in the outside world seemed irrelevant to him. The gazes of many people were fixed on Yi Futian's silhouette. It seemed that the monstrous figures from various forces had high hopes in him. Even if it wasn't them, as long as Yi Futian could locate the final imperial star, it was considered a breakthrough for all of them. The cultivators of Heavenly Mandate Academy, as well as Four Corner Village, had even higher hopes in Yi Futian. They wondered whether or not he would find the last imperial star. Time passed by gradually. Yi Futian was not the only one searching for the imperial star. Many other cultivators were also doing so. However, no one had managed to find it yet. In the part of the starry sky that Yi Futian was at, time seemed to have come to a halt. He sat there motionlessly. Just like that, a long time passed. Yi Futian retracted his consciousness and opened his eyes. He let out a long breath and felt somewhat tired. Having cultivated to his level, he was naturally not physically tired. However, he was mentally drained by the process. Finding the presence of the imperial star in this vast starry sky was extremely draining mentally. He glanced over to a nearby spot. His third brother, Gu Donglu, and the others were comprehending. However, they had yet to communicate with the imperial star. Yi Futian hoped that someone among them could manage to do so. After resting for a while, Yi Futian continued to sense. The stars in the sky were endless. He naturally would not be disheartened for not being able to find the imperial star. Everything remained the same. He continued to be in his state of Zen. Just like that, a day passed. On this day, brilliant starlight shone down on where Gu Donglu and the others were. The starlight landed on Gu Donglio's figure. Right then, frightening demonic qi emanated from his body, causing Gu Donglio's handsome face to appear demonic. Long Chen, Jun, and the others shook their heads and smiled bitterly. They never imagined that, as demonic beasts, they had actually failed to communicate with this demon monarch imperial star. Instead, Gu Donglu had managed to do so. However, back in the day, Gu Donglu had obtained a great fateful encounter in the demon realm. He possessed the teachings of a demon monarch. Hence, it was not strange that he had communicated with the star now. When the other cultivators in the starry sky saw this scene, they could not help but lament. Yi Futian had helped another good friend of his. Now, there truly was only one last imperial star left. Goddess Taihua also glanced over here. She had a complicated look in her eyes. With Yi Futian's help, she would have had a very high chance of communicating with the imperial star that contained the way of rhythm. However, it was now impossible for her to ask for Yi Futian's help. What was gone was gone. She would not go and ask for his help. Yi Futian wouldn't necessarily agree even if she did. There is only one last star left, someone mumbled as they looked at the starry sky. That's right. There is only one left. He has already been scanning for it for a day. I wonder whether or not he will find it soon. Pondered a cultivator to the side as he looked up into the starry sky at Yi Futian, who was quietly sitting there. Yi Futian was completely in his state of Zen. He should be able to find the last imperial star, right? After all, he had already found 3 of them. Time passed slowly. Everyone was waiting. Some people had tried searching for the imperial star themselves, but the last imperial star had yet to appear. Even Yi Futian had not found it. After 3 days, Yi Futian retracted his consciousness once again. He felt his heart stir. His gaze was not as calm and confident as before. How many times had he failed? For the previous imperial stars, he had not taken so long to locate them. Yet, this time, he had not come across anything after a long time. How is this possible? Lamented Yi Futian as he frowned. His consciousness swept over the various stars, yet he still could not find it. Why was that? Was this imperial star hidden deeper within space? It wasn't just him. Other people had not managed to find it too. It seemed as though the last imperial star was the hardest to find. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Tip: you can use left, right, A and D keyboard keys to browse between chapters. Chapter 2232, A Ray of Hope. Chapter 2232, A Ray of Hope. Were there truly 8 imperial stars? Yi Futian thought to himself. Even he began to suspect this. For several days, his consciousness had scanned the sky of stars, but he still could not locate it. The few monstrous figures, who managed to communicate with an imperial star before this, similarly had not found it. This aroused suspicion in Yi Futian. His figure turned around and glanced in other directions. He saw that many people in the starry sky were looking at him. They seemed to be waiting for him to find the last imperial star. I scanned the starry sky but have not found the final imperial star. Back then, under Great Emperor Ziwei, are you certain that there were 8 Great Emperor-level figures? Yi Futian asked the crowd loudly. Legend has it that the 8 glorious emperors under Great Emperor Ziwei were 8 Great Emperor-level figures. There should be no mistake in that. The imperial stars that have been communicated with seem to prove this point as well. Before this, the imperial star in that direction should belong to Great Emperor Tiankuei, someone said as they pointed in one direction. The person seemed certain. This caused a twinkle in Yi Futian's eyes as he nodded his head slightly. If that is the case, the last imperial star is mostly hidden deep within space. It won't be easy to find, Yi Futian stated. Everyone, let's try hard together. The crowd responded as they nodded their heads. Then, Yi Futian continued to sit down cross-legged with his eyes closed. Divine light circled around his figure as his consciousness floated over towards the starry sky. He began to continue his search for the imperial star. The ethereal starry sky was vast and boundless. Yi Futian was even more serious than before. He focused all his energy on scanning the sky. This imperial star was too crucial. When the 8 glorious imperial stars appeared, all the pieces would fall into place, and they might be able to trigger the secret left behind by Great Emperor Ziwei. Hence, this time, Yi Futian was very focused. The starry sky was vast and appeared very quiet. In this quiet starry sky, it was as though time did not flow. Yi Futian spent an even longer time to sense the entire starry sky this time around, passing over each region of stars. However, he still came out empty-handed. It was not just him, it was the same for the other cultivators. No one managed to find the last imperial star. Yi Futian sat underneath the starry sky. His ink-black eyes stared at the starry world. He could not help but be suspicious. Although there were 8 glorious emperors under Great Emperor Ziwei, was it possible that one of them had not left behind their power to be inherited? If that was the case, could the remaining 7 imperial stars be sufficient to unravel the secrets of the starry sky? He couldn't help but glance at the locations of the 7 imperial stars. He unleashed powerful detection as he closed his eyes. The entire starry sky appeared in his mind, with the 7 imperial stars shining brightly. In Yi Futian's life palace, he developed a world with an endless starry sky to match the locations of each imperial star. He wanted to see whether he could deduce any pattern from the imperial stars by doing so. After a long while, he still made 0 discoveries. He retracted his consciousness and once again opened his eyes. The starry sky remained vast and mysterious, like a riddle that would never be solved. It was full of unknowns. Other cultivators who were similarly attempting to find the last star also encountered dead ends like Yi Futian. Everyone present in this starry sky felt helpless. They were out of ideas. All their probing and searching came to a halt. Yi Futian was the person with the highest chance of succeeding among all of them. However, even he was similarly feeling helpless. From the looks of it, they were still far from being able to unravel the secrets of the starry sky. Yi Futian gazed at the starry sky and the illusory silhouette of Great Emperor Ziwei. All the illusory figures of the other great emperors formed part of the silhouette of Great Emperor Ziwei. Were they somehow related? However, Yi Futian still didn't discover anything even after staring at the silhouettes for a long time. You still can't find anything? Someone asked Yi Futian. Yi Futian didn't turn around. He merely shook his head quietly. His gaze was fixed on the sky above. He said in a low voice, "I can't find it. It is as though it never existed. I have tried a few times to no avail." Everyone fell silent when they heard his words. Even Yi Futian said that he couldn't locate the last star. It was most likely truly hard to be found. The others would have an even harder time trying to locate the last star. Could it be that the secrets of the starry sky would remain unfathomable even with all the monstrous figures from various realms gathered here? If that was the case, the best inheritance they could get was the power unleashed from communicating and resonating with the few imperial stars. As for the secrets of Great Emperor Ziwei, they would remain hidden in this endless starry sky for future generations to discover. If we simultaneously communicate with all the imperial stars found and make the divine lights fall from the stars, would it help to unravel the secrets? Suggested someone. This suggestion caused many people to reveal strange expressions. Was this idea worth a try? We can try, said a cultivator who had resonated with one of the imperial stars. Since we can't find it with other ways, there's no harm trying it, seconded another cultivator who had also resonated with an imperial star. It seemed like many of them agreed to try out this method. Futian glanced at them and then nodded in agreement. Since they were all out of ideas, they could only attempt whatever was possible. Immediately Futian, Blind Tai, Gu Donglu, and the others went to the imperial stars that they had communicated with, respectively. The other cultivators also took their positions. This time, they began to communicate with the imperial stars in the sky together. Not long after, divine light shone down from the heavens. 7 consecutive beams of divine light shone down at the same time. For a moment, the entire starry sky was lit up. It was extremely dazzling to behold. It was as though 7 pillars of divine light had descended and were holding up this starry world. Futian was bathed in the divine light of one of these imperial stars. At the same time, he observed the other locations. The 7 beams of divine light did not interfere with one another, as though there was no connection between them at all. The starry sky also did not show any signs of response. Everything seemed normal. The other cultivators observed the changes in the starry sky. They saw the starlight flowing, but it did not appear to have any pattern to it. After some time, Futian stopped communicating with the imperial star and retracted himself from that state. As he looked at the starry world, he felt a sense of helplessness. He still had not obtained anything. Throughout all these years, the cultivators of Ziwei Imperial Palace had most likely failed in many attempts as well. Right now, Futian was certain that the cultivators of Ziwei Imperial Palace had also resonated with the imperial stars here. As for how many stars the latter could establish a connection with, he did not know. However, they were most likely also exploring how to unravel the secrets left behind by Great Emperor Ziwei. Unfortunately, up until now, no one managed to unveil the secrets yet. They had attempted many methods to no avail. Futian's pupils turned exceptionally bizarre as he stared at the stars in the sky. He could see the starlight flowing, forming a star chart. The starlight flowed towards where the 7 imperial stars were. It was as though the 7 stars were 7 points of focus that were endlessly absorbing all the starlight. Futian revealed a strange expression. Observing from the outside seemed to give off a different sensation than when he was among the stars. The vast star chart seemed to have some sort of unique pattern, yet it felt as though it could not be traced. However, right then, Futian felt a ray of hope. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Tip: you can use left, right, A and D keyboard keys to browse between chapters. Right at this moment, a figure floated towards Futian. The figure was a maiden with outstanding temperament and appearance. Right at this moment, a figure floated towards Futian. The figure was a maiden with outstanding temperament and appearance. She wore a purple long dress, and the hem of her skirt fluttered. She looked like an ethereal goddess. Purple light twinkled in her eyes as she stared at Futian. "Are you observing the starry sky?" the maiden in the purple dress asked softly. Futian nodded. "My name is Luo Su. I cultivate songs and rhythm. I am also a successor of the divine melody like you. I am from outer violet heaven of the divine prefecture." The maiden introduced herself. "Perhaps Renhuang Yi and I can be friends." Futian looked at the maiden. Outer violet heaven was naturally a top force in the divine prefecture. However, he knew very little about it. This female Renhuang had a pair of clear and bright eyes. She gave off a dependable vibe. Moreover, Yi Futian was somewhat surprised that she would actually take the initiative to approach him. He understood what she wanted. Since she was proficient in songs and rhythm, she could only be here for one reason. Before this, quite a lot of cultivators intended to approach Yi Futian for the same reason. However, Yi Futian warded off all those people with the condition that the person who received help from him had to help him to kill Ninghua. After all, no one was willing to kill the vice-chief of the Donghua domain chief's manor for the sake of a fateful encounter. Moreover, it was hard to say whether they had the ability to kill Ninghua. If they ended up being targeted by the vice-chief of the Donghua domain chief's manor instead, it would be disastrous. Why would Luo Su think that he would agree to her request? However, she indeed came at the perfect timing. Luo Su explained, "Before this, I have sensed this imperial star, but I was still missing something. If Ren Huangyi is willing to help me, I'm sure that I'll be able to resonate with the star very quickly. Then, Ren Huangyi can observe the pattern of the 7 stars as an outsider. It might help you to have new discovery and locate the 8th imperial star." She continued, "Of course, if Ren Huangyi has other conditions, you may voice it out as well. I'll do it as long as it's within my capabilities." Yi Futian took a good look at this beautiful female Ren Huang. Luo Su's calm and sincere attitude made him feel comfortable around her. Before this, he intended to pass the teachings of the imperial star to goddess Taihua. In reality, he was using it as a chance to get closer to Taihua Mountain and form good connections with them. However, goddess Taihua's cold attitude caused him to abandon his plan. Now, Luo Su had proactively come forward. She was also a successor of the divine melody. There was no reason not to help her. After all, for Yi Futian, there was no harm in doing so. If he could forge a friendship with a top force, he was more than willing to do so. "You know that I am proficient in the divine melody?" asked Yi Futian. "How could I not tell the lost sound of the great path, the rhythm of the song of the lost divine?" replied Luo Su as she smiled. Yi Futian nodded and said, "All right. If that is the case, I am willing to be friends with you." As he said this, divine light shone from his glabella and shot towards Luo Su's glabella, burrowing straight into her mind. Luo Su did not stop him from doing so, allowing the light to enter her mind. She seemed to have a faint realization as she smiled at Yi Futian. She bowed her head slightly and said, "Many thanks, Ren Huangyi. I will head over and give it a try." "All right," replied Yi Futian as he nodded back at her. Luo Su floated upwards, her purple dress fluttering as she went off. Her detection swept out towards the starry sky. Not long after, in the starry sky above, starlight descended, and powerful rhythmic sorcery surrounded her figure. The various imperial stars in the heavens resonated. "So fast," commented Yi Futian as he revealed a look of astonishment. It seemed that Luo Su was not lying. Before this, she was almost able to communicate with the imperial star. With Yi Futian's guidance, she had managed to do so in a very short amount of time. The 7 stars gathered as Yi Futian stood observing from below. This time, the star chart seemed even more complete. Was this a divine matrix? Yi Futian thought as he gazed at the star chart above. There was flowing starlight and the 7 silhouettes of the great emperors. Yi Futian was most likely the only one who could see the silhouettes of the 7 great emperors. The rest of the cultivators could only see the divine halos emitted by the imperial stars. As for the cultivators immersed in the divine lights, they would probably be able to sense the silhouette of the great emperor they formed a connection with. Yi Futian's senses were fully immersed in the starry sky. He seemed to become one with the stars. His consciousness flowed with the starlight. Gradually, he noticed that the flowing starlight and the dazzling silhouettes of the great emperors were all facing the same direction. The image of the entire starry sky seemed to appear in Yi Futian's pupils. The image even appeared in his mind. "They are facing the silhouette of great Emperor Ziwei," Yi Futian said as his heart pounded. He felt as though he was beginning to discern a pattern. The 7 silhouettes of the great emperors were all facing the silhouette of great Emperor Ziwei. If so, that should also be the case for the 8th silhouette. The 7 silhouettes of the great emperors were at different locations. However, they were each at the center of a region. Yet, it felt as though something was missing. What was missing? Futian's mind raced. The 7 silhouettes of the great emperors were facing the silhouette of great Emperor Ziwei. Where was the 8th silhouette? He began to search the starry sky. He did not know where the location of the last silhouette of the great emperor would be. It should match the star chart and the positions of the other 7 silhouettes of the great emperors. Time passed. The 7 cultivators remained as they were, causing the positions of the imperial stars to be clearer. At the same time, this allowed Futian to more easily sense the presence of the silhouettes of the great emperors. Unsure as to why, the cultivators in the starry sky actually believed that Futian would most likely be the one to find the 8th imperial star. This had nothing to do with his identity or his ability. It was purely because Futian had performed the best so far. Since he performed the best, he naturally had the highest chances of success. Futian seemed to be using the crudest method to determine the location of the silhouette. However, even so, he still had not managed to find it after a long time. This made even the others suspicious. Could it be that the 8th imperial star truly did not exist? After a long while, even Futian became restless. He retracted his consciousness. His vision gradually returned to normal. He sighed internally. The starry sky was too vast and mysterious. He could not solve its mystery. The star chart had exceeded his abilities. I can't solve it, Futian said to the cultivators who were all staring at the starry sky. In reality, everyone present had their own agenda to pursue. However, they were unified by the same goal now, which was to unravel the secrets of great Emperor Ziwei. Are we really all out of ideas? Someone sighed and lamented softly. Great Emperor Ziwei was a great emperor from the past. What exactly was his intention for leaving behind this starry cultivation court? Could it be that the teachings of the 7 imperial stars are the only thing being stored here? How about the heavenly scroll that great Emperor Ziwei is holding? What does it mean? When Futian heard the person's words, his gaze turned around slowly and stared in the direction of the heavenly scroll that the silhouette of great Emperor Ziwei held in his hand. He was momentarily stunned. Then he looked in other directions. At this moment, Futian's heart quivered uncontrollably. The heavenly scroll. Futian's heart trembled as his gaze was fixed on the heavenly scroll in the hand of the silhouette of great Emperor Ziwei. Before this, some cultivators attempted to unravel the secret of the heavenly scroll, but all of them had failed. Some of them tried to retrieve it, but it was even more futile of an endeavor. Why must the teachings left behind by the great emperors be stored within a star? Futian exclaimed internally. All of them seemed to have been caught up in the wrong line of thought. It was true that there were 8 great emperors under great Emperor Ziwei. However, the teachings of the great emperors might not necessarily have transformed into the imperial stars. Futian might have found it. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.